Good morning and welcome to City Council's continued budget hearings. Councilman O'Connor, I'll be chairing this meeting today. This committee is on public safety. I'm joined by Director Hisrich as well as his team. This meeting is going to start with public safety. We're going to go to police, EMS, animal control, and then follow up with fire. We are going to begin this meeting with Michael Strelick from our budget office, who's going to give us an overview of public safety. Then I'm going to pass it off to Chief Hisrich. Michael.
All right, so today we're joined by the Department of Public Safety. The department contains the Bureaus of Administration, Emergency Medical Services, Police, Fire, and Animal Care and Control. Public Safety also has some oversight of the Office of Community Health and Safety and Stop the Violence Trust Fund, but we have a budget hearing specifically scheduled for them Monday the 6th. Council members, of course, can ask any questions they want, but I'd recommend waiting for the detailed questions on that till Monday the 6th. The Bureau of Administration's budget this year is just short of $12 million. It's a 3.5% increase. EMS is $27.6 million. Fire is $120.5 million. And I'll go more into detail when we get to those bureaus, just providing a general overview. Bureau of Fire is $92 million. Animal Care and Control is about $1.8 million. Makes sense to start with the Bureau of Administration because they have oversight and centralized support for the other bureaus of public safety. Their budget's, like I said, just short of $12 million. That's an increase of 3.5%. If you look carefully at the budget, it notes a large decrease of $5.3 million. That's just because we transferred the transfer to the Stop the Violence Trust Fund from within Public Safety Admin over to the 5-year forecast where like the transfer to the PAYGO capital lives. So on paper, there's a huge decrease, but they're not actually decreased by that much. The Bureau of Administration contains 137 positions. In addition to the centralized support, it also contains the Office of Special Events, and the crossing guards moved there last year. So it's on paper, it looks like a large increase from a couple of years ago. There's just two minor changes to the salaries. Executive assistant was swapped for a business administrator, and the public safety director received a small increase to keep pace with the top rank of the FOP. The non-salary subclasses within the Bureau of Administration change across 8 line items. Total decrease of $240,000, not including, again, the $5 million that moved but didn't really be eliminated. The larger changes were protective and investigative increased by just short of $1 million. That's a shot spotter contractual increase. Machinery and equipment decreased by $1.6 million. The 2-year project of purchasing AEDs has been completed, so of course that expense has dropped off. Vehicles increased by a little bit, $290,000. That's restoring the vehicles to what it was in the 2000 budget. We budget police cars and public safety admin rather than in the capital budget because they only last for 2 to 3 years because they're running 3 shifts. Some other large increases, workforce training by $60,000. It's boating classes for EMS and the fire boats. Operational supplies by $15,000. That's just restoring a reduction from last year. The Bureau does have a couple of revenues. We have the Northview Heights reimbursement from the Housing Authority of $1.5 million to cover the Northview Heights area. And some salaries and reimbursement for the park rangers, which are housed in Bureau of Administration rather than parks. They do have a couple of trust funds, including the Secondary Employment Trust Fund. That receives a lot of revenue over the course of the year, but most of it is for the police officers' details, of course. So the actual amount in it that is available for city use is about $1.7 million right now. The Stop the Violence Trust Fund, which again, we'll talk about December 6th in more detail. The Special Events Trust Fund, about $700,000 in that trust fund as of today. The Public Safety Training Trust Fund, which is used mostly for police, but can be used for the rest of the public safety bureaus, has about $1 million in it. The Emergency Management and Homeland Security Trust Fund has, again, about $1 million. The Mayor's Youth Initiative has about $200,000 remaining, and then there's two smaller ones, the Southside Parking Enhancement District, which is shared with a bunch of other departments and bureaus, but public safety has access to it. And the Public Safety Support Trust Fund has about $250,000 remaining in it. There are other trust funds in other bureaus, but we'll talk about them when we get to the other bureaus. So turn it over to Director Hisrich if he has anything additional or can correct anything I may have been mistaken on.
Thank you. And if I may just take a second, introduce my staff with me. To my right is my business administrator, Zoe Birch. To my left is our technology manager, Dan Shack, and our deputy director, Shatera Murphy, a business administrator, Charles Shires, and Lee Schmidt, who is my assistant director. First off, I'd like to thank council and the mayor's office and the Office of Management and Budget for their continued support throughout the year and to help us put together this budget. Most importantly, I'd like to thank all the public safety personnel who during the past 2 years during the pandemic, most all of the employees did not have the option of staying at home or working from home. They've been out on the street on a daily basis, both interacting, treating, transporting patients and individuals with possibly COVID. I am happy to report that today we only have 10 public safety personnel across the department off, none of which are hospitalized, and hopefully within time they'll all be returning back to work. This year we're starting to get back to normal. We were able to support the 4th of July activities downtown, and we were able to do it with violence intervention teams. This weekend, of course, we are planning for the light up night, and of course, to coincide with that, we have a large pit football game going on at the same time. We've been successful in curtailing the violence in the south side, East Carson Street area with both the officers on the street, our public safety personnel, our technology, and I had a meeting with the residents of south side during the past week, and they are very thankful to all public safety and the mayor's office for the support and hope it continues. This year has been a change for public safety. Of course, we are working along with the mayor's police reform task force in revisioning both police and public safety on how we respond to incidents. I mean, our goal is to try to prevent crime from happening and try to take care of those individuals that are in need, whether it be homelessness or have mental issues. And it is a complicated project that we are working with. We are working day to day with the mayor's Office of Health and Safety. And as you mentioned, we will be having a further budget hearing with them in December, which we will go in depth with our cooperation and our work with them. The technology, we've expanded. Just to give you a quick update on that, 5 years ago when I took over, we had about 135 cameras and about only 70% were operational. We are very close to having 900 cameras, which is operational is about 97 to 99% at all times. This has helped out in preventing crime and solving crime. Our ShotSpotter system continues on a day-to-day basis. We are responding to incidents, and we are able to provide through our real-time crime center and our camera system insight to the officers and public safety personnel as to what is going on at a scene before the officers arrive. And with the ShotSpotter system, we have saved numerous lives throughout the time, and it, of course, has been expanded from 3 square miles to 18 square miles throughout the city. So with that being said, I will turn it over quickly to either Shatera or to Lee if they have anything additional, and we'll be able to answer any questions regarding public safety administration and then move on to police.
I'll go. I don't have anything additional for this specific budget hearing, given the fact that most of my staff has been moved. is paid for out of the Stop Violence Trust Fund, which we will address in further detail on December 6th. I will say that one thing that we were looking for in support for the Nighttime Economy Office, as well as our violence prevention efforts, is an analyst. But again, I will go into greater detail about that on December 6th.
Lee?
From my standpoint, everything's going pretty well. We have crossing guards fall under me. It's been a challenging year with the school changes for them, as well as short staff. It's really not a budget issue per se. It's more of a staffing and recruitment issue, which we're trying to work through. But other than that, I'm just here to support and answer any questions council may have.
Councilman O'Connor, back to you, sir.
Thank you very much. I cannot see Chambers, but I just got a text from Council President that herself and Councilwoman Gross are in Chambers. So I don't know why we can't see that for some reason. But I will pass it off. Council members, do you have any questions for public safety overall?
Can you hear us? Councilman O'Connor, can you hear us?
I can hear you. I just, now I can see the room. Thank you. Yeah, I would start with whomever wants to go first.
Okay, thank you, Councilwoman Smith.
For police, I don't have it for the general administration.
Right. So my questions were kind of about the org chart and how the city budget is arranged. I would be showing this on my Zoom screen if I were actually Zooming, but you can't see it on this camera, I'm sure. But what I'm looking at is the organizational chart, just so people can kind of look and figure out the pages of the budget with the different pots of money. It's a little confusing, I think, because there's so much housed under public safety. It really is a very big department. And underneath that department, there are many bureaus. And so, look, we're joined by Councilman Strasburger. And so when what we were just presented with was basically the budget just for the top box, not the subsidiary boxes, not all the boxes that are branches. And some of these boxes are staff under this big box budget, but the ones out to the left-hand side are separately and additionally budgeted. I just want to make sure I'm saying all that right. So for example, this top box, it says Director of Public Safety. I think what we're seeing here is just the budget for Bureau of Administration, because Bureau of Administration doesn't have its own box over on the side. So kind of just for clarity of the budget presentation in the mayor's budget and then also Mr. Strelick's budget, let me ask that question to both Director Hisrich and to Mike Strelick. When I'm looking at this top box, it says Director of Public Safety. This chart in front of me both has an org chart, but also kind of a budget chart. So where we were just discussing the Bureau of Administration that has a total budget of basically $12 million, $11,973,098. Does that make sense, Mike and Director Hisrich?
Yes, Councilwoman, the Director of Public Safety, everything underneath that to include, and I'm sorry, I don't know what chart you're looking at, but the one that I'm looking at is the Bureau of Administration. Everything under that chart, with the exception of the EMS, the Fire, Bureau of Police, Animal Care Control, which are separate budgets, everything under the Director of Public Safety on the right-hand side would be contained in the budget that we're discussing right now, the 12.
Right, so the Public Information Office, that's under the $12 million budget.
That is correct.
Right, Victims Assistance, that's under the $12 million budget. Park Rangers.
Yes.
Events. Office of Special Events.
That's correct.
There's a dotted line out to the Office of Community Health and Safety, but it's on my left-hand side of my sheet. Does that mean it's separately budgeted, or is it housed under the $12 million Bureau of Administration budget?
Oh, it's separately budgeted, and that, of course, currently it's paid for partially out of the trust fund It's currently under the mayor's office. However, we have daily working relationship with the Office of Community Health and Safety. So it is a separate budget, which I believe, Mike, you said we will have a hearing on that in December 6th, I believe you said.
Correct, yeah.
I mean, what you're seeing here is basically a organizational dotted line, which we work with them on a daily basis, but the budget comes out of a separate entity.
Okay, great. So that's a mayor's office budget down there. I circled these in pink because they have their own budget somewhere else. The Stop the Violence Fund is listed on our kind of cheat sheet from our budget office at 7.2 million, but it isn't its own bureau. So it isn't, it's a fund, but it isn't. The other items are bureaus that have their own budgets.
That's correct. It comes out of the Office of Community Health and Safety, majority of it, as well as some of the positions that come out of the trust fund, of which you said 7-point-something million. But once again, we will go in depth on that on December 6th when we discuss the Office of Community Health and Safety.
Right. So in order of my chart with the pink circles, well, actually I should circle this one at pink too, because it's got its own basically page of the budget with its own number. So the Bureau of Administration is, like I said, around 12 million.
That's correct.
Bureau of Emergency Services is 27.5 million roughly.
EMS, yes, ma'am.
Bureau of Fire is 92.1 million. Bureau of Police is 120.5 million. Bureau of Animal Control is almost 2 million, but not really. 1.7 million. And then, like we said, Office of Community Health and Safety is at 5 million, but it really isn't under public safety in the budget. And then the Stop the Violence Fund is funding various parts of public safety, but maybe other things as well. And so it's just it's a pot of money, but it isn't a department or a bureau. All right, that's my basic questions. I'm looking for the crossing guards, and I don't see them on my org chart, and I can't remember. Last year they moved, so I'm wondering where they are now.
They have recently, well, within the past 7, 8, 9 months, yes, they've fully moved under public safety, and they're under the Assistant Director Lee Schmidt.
Okay, so I'm going to add a little box under my org chart here because I'm not seeing them. I see park rangers, but I don't see crossing guards. So we don't want to lose them. I'm going to make my own little box out here for crossing guards. And so it is directly under the Bureau of Administration, not under police.
That is correct.
Got it. But 2 years ago, it was under police. In the 2019 budget, crossing guards were included in the police budget.
Correct.
Maybe even in 2020.
2020, I believe was, oh no, you are correct. Yeah, it was 2021. It was moved to Public Safety Administration.
All right. I think I understand who is controlling and which pots of money there are. That's actually all the questions I have for Bureau of Administration. Thank you.
Yeah, Councilwoman, if you look under the administration part in the in-depth portion of the budget, you will see the school crossing guards, even though that there is not a block designated for them.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Any other members for public safety overall? I know we're joined by.
Oh, yeah.
A little baby. We're going by a little baby.
A fun meeting. I know we're joined by Councilman Lavelle as well. I don't know if Council President or Councilman Strasburg had any questions for.
Councilman O'Connor, I do have one question.
Okay, go ahead, and then we'll pass it off to. I don't know if I heard anybody else. So,
Director Hisrich, I'm sort of the opinion that the Office of Community Health and Safety should probably be housed under public safety. I'm just curious of your thoughts.
Yeah, I think as we get further and further as to the operations portion of the Office of Community Health and Safety, when I say the operational portion, as far as putting personnel, teaming them up with public safety to include police officers, my personal opinion, and I discuss this later in December, is that for logistical purposes, for safety purposes, and for legal purposes, it should be under public safety down the road. To start and to initiate the office, we felt it was appropriate to be a separate entity until it gets up and running. But as the interviews continue, and like I say, we can discuss the plans down the road, but the idea is to put personnel out in the street and to be able to adequately control and respond. I think it should be under public safety.
Okay, thank you.
Any other members of council?
Councilman O'Connor.
Oh, Council President, go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Nice seeing the baby. I said we'd get another woman here, and I guess that was our way of getting her here.
I will hopefully be down to visit everybody soon. Today, sorry, my wife's on 2 conference calls, so this is going to be an interesting morning. But I'll try my best. Okay.
Well, you're doing a good balancing act. I just want to thank Director Historick and the entire department for everything that they've been doing, getting the city through COVID, all the employees. They've really gotten us through a really difficult time. And I just want to thank you all for your work and for your service to the city of Pittsburgh. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Council President.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members in chambers just for the overall public safety directors? Not at this time. Okay. Director, or actually, Michael, do you mind going through the police budget?
Sure. The Bureau of Police, they provide law enforcement and public safety services to Pittsburgh's residents and visitors. Bureau is organized in the Chief's Office and the branches of Administration, Investigations, and Operations. As of the third quarter report, the Bureau of Police had 969 employees on staff, of which 919 are frontline FOP uniform personnel. Their proposed budget for 2022 is $120,578,407. That's an increase of about 5%. The total uniformed police officers remains budgeted at 900. If you look closely at the budget, it looks like it increases from 898 to 900. That's just because a grant expired. So 2 officers moved from page 400 to page 200 of the budget. There's also funding for $850,000 worth of police recruits and first-year officers. The largest salary change this year is probably the addition of a new classification of colonels. 5 new colonels have been added to the budget. That's not additional, not 5 additional. That was taken from, I believe, 4 officers and 1 commander to make those new 5 positions. Premium pay is also increased by almost $600,000. There's a couple of non-salary changes of note. Non-salary items increased by 4.5%. Operational supplies increased by $370,000. I believe that's mostly for body armor, which I think was a capital request and made it to the operating budget instead. Land and buildings decreased by $930,000. That's because the narcotics warehouse is closing and moving to the Steamfitters building, whose budget will be in probably DPW facilities. Computer maintenance increased by $50,000 for an imaging system. Machinery and equipment decreased back to pre-pandemic levels, as did the cleaning of police vehicles. We did a lot more cleaning over the last 20 months, so that will hopefully decrease as we move out of COVID. There's no capital projects within the Bureau of Police, but there's a couple of things in the capital budget that affect them. Police SUVs are in the capital budget, the capital acquisition plan for $1.8 million. And IMP has a project for a forensic evidence server for about $240,000. Bureau of Police has a number of trust funds, the Secondary Employment Trust Fund, which I touched on under administration, because administration has the actual control of that, even though it's mostly for police officers. The Confiscated Narcotics Proceed Trust Fund and the Non-Narcotics Proceed Trust Funds, those are civil asset forfeiture funds. Between the 2 of them, there's about $2.5 million in them. as of last month. A couple of smaller ones, the Federal Task Force Trust Fund still has $50,000 left in it. The Graffiti Trust Fund has $80,000. Mounted Police Trust Fund is about run down, $600 left in it. Same with the DARE Trust Fund, $7,500, and two more that are really tiny. And turn it back over to either Director Hisrich or if Chief Schubert has signed on.
Now, I have with me Deputy Chief Tom Stangrecki. I'm sure that many of you are aware that Chief Schubert is recuperating from back surgery. So I feel confident between Deputy Chief Stangrecki and also our acting business administrator for the time being, as well as being the Assistant Director, Lee Schmidt, who is currently fulfilling both roles. We should be able to answer any questions you should have. So, Councilman O'Connor, I'll turn it back over to you to do the lineup.
Yes, I will begin with Council President Smith. I don't know if I saw on the picture if Council Member Coghill has joined us as well. So I was just going to go around the table from what I see and go to Council President Smith, Councilwoman Strasburger, if that's Councilman Coghill, Council Member Gross, and then Councilman Lavelle if he has questions.
Thank you.
I'll start with Council President Smith.
Thank you, Councilman. First of all, I think that, we have so much going on with our police department, and there's so many issues. And I think some of those issues, and I'm not asking for a comment on this one, I'm just going to make a statement myself. Some of those issues may have led to us adding 5 new positions into the budget for colonels. And I just want to say, I think that a lot of that is because, people think that we need more oversight. And I think where we need the oversight might be actually on the streets, not any more positions adding to the top brass. I think that also our chief is one of the lowest paid chiefs in the region. And I think so are our commanders, and so are our lieutenants and others. And I think if you really want to get really quality people attracted to Pittsburgh, we need to at least start looking at those positions and what we're paying. And maybe it's time to add an increase for the chief. If we have $600,000 to spend on 5 new positions, maybe we should encourage paying our staff better so that when people are looking to come somewhere, they think of this as some place for the future. So maybe some leaders that can do some of the things that we'd like to accomplish in terms of the police oversight and their brass. I don't know what our assistant chiefs make. I just think that I know they all work extremely hard, extremely long hours. I know our people on the streets could use sergeants, and that there's a lot of people that are underpaid working for the city of Pittsburgh. But I am going to say that it's my intention of taking those 5 positions out of the budget. I don't think that that's something that we need. And others may differ and disagree, and that remains to be seen what happens. But that's my intention, because I do not think, and I'm not asking for a response, I do not think that this is what we need at this time. And I'm not as involved as the administration. So I want to say I really do trust that the administration is doing what they think is right. I just think that that if that's something that's needed, it's out there. The new administration coming in can make that determination. That's all I'm going to say about that part. The other thing, we talked about the police moving to the Steamfitter building. And I'm just wondering how that's going to work, like when they have events there that are political events there, and it's rented out, the hall is rented out, how that works with our police, since they're supposed to remain uninvolved in politics. I can't think of the word right now, but they're not supposed to be involved in politics, but yet that building is probably going to still be used for some of those political functions. So I'm just wondering how that balancing act will work out.
Yes, my Assistant Director, Lee Schmidt, has been basically overseeing that project, so I will refer to him on answering your question, Council President.
Okay, thank you.
The Steamfitters' intention is to essentially use that property on a very limited basis. If they do have anything, it would just be internal meetings there, and they have to give us a minimum of 48 hours notice so we can make sure that space is empty for our purposes, and that hall that they have will still remain separate, utilized by police for events as necessary in briefing rooms, meetings, etc. But we will not have operations in that section of the building at this time.
So I know that there's some events scheduled and we're not yet in there. So I just want to make sure that that's clear that we're not yet in there. But once we are, I think, as Councilwoman Gross mentioned, it needs to be in the lease so that we can make sure we keep those boundaries very clear.
Yeah, so it, like I stated, it is actually in the lease that they have to give us at least 48 hours notice if they want to use the hall. And
I'm okay with the Steamfitters using the hall. I'm saying other people are using the hall other than the Steamfitters for political purposes. Councilman Coghill and I have been there for many political functions, many.
yeah,
And
it will not be used for that anymore.
I just want to make sure that we're not putting our police in a situation that they don't need to be in. That's all. And I think that's it. That was basically it for me. I just want to thank everyone for their leadership. I think we have an amazing police department. And I know that there are issues and there are certain things right now that we're working through. But overall, the majority of our police are out in the communities every day doing a really great job and difficult work. And I just want to make sure that I acknowledge them for the things that they do. And the positive. And I mean, every day they're out in our communities building relationships. And when I hear people talking about restructuring, I look at my communities and they beg for more police officers. And I'm concerned about the staffing at a lot of them. I'm worried about, could you tell me just briefly, do you have any plans to put are there any plans, have you talked to the new administration coming in, any plans to add a police class because they are dangerously low? And I know in my own zones, they are really, really staffed very poorly. I mean, people are either out ill or they're out for various reasons, or they're just not there. I mean, the numbers showing on the paper are not the numbers that they have available at every shift. So are there any plans for classes to be put on?
Let me just quickly answer that. I mean, over the last 2 years, we have lost 119 officers. And as of this morning, I believe we're hovering around 903, 905, which is the budgeted amount. However, as we are all aware, we potentially could have retirements, will have retirements where we could lose a couple hundred officers that are eligible, not to say that they're all going to retire, but the short answer to your question, Council President, is yes, there is money in next year's budget for a class. That class, depending on whether or not the officers coming in are already certified as Act 120, will range between 30 or 40. And I would strongly encourage that we conduct that class next year. Needless to say, if they're already certified as Act 120 as police officers, training them will be a lot shorter, probably 4 months versus an entire year. But hopefully we can get that class with the new administration's approval up and running probably within 4 or 5 months next year. Hopefully by May of next year, we will have a class up and running.
And I need to work with you, and I'd like to do this really quickly, actually, maybe next week. I was, a lot of my residents asked that before we place some votes on different police legislation that comes forward, or before we introduce any further legislation, that we do drive-throughs with the police, the council members with the police, and see, some of the issues they're dealing with and ways that we might be able to help actually be helpful with legislation. And also, I have residents, and I'm inviting all of you. They've invited you to come down at 1 o'clock in the morning to sit on a porch in Sheridan, and they want us to come down and spend some time to see why they feel that sometimes we're out of touch with what we're doing with the police. So I'm going to invite you all down to their homes.
Yeah,
some of the people that
we can do that right after we go down Carson Street and ride through there. So we can certainly put that on the agenda as well.
Yeah.
But yes, and as far as council members riding with the police, that offer has always been out there since I've been here, and that's certainly to be arranged.
Well, we already discussed, we'd like to do it. So if we can do it sometime next week, maybe fit it in the evening. And I also want to acknowledge that Councilman Kraus did a lot of work too in Southside, working with you. I mean, he does a lot to make sure that he's trying to be proactive. And I know that he seems sometimes that he's, talking a lot about it, but when you see what the residents are dealing with, you understand why it's such an important issue. So I just want to thank him as well for his work. Thank you, everyone.
Totally agree
Be
with
safe.
that, Council President.
I'm
Thank you.
sorry.
Thank you, Council President. I will then, just going from what I saw at the table, I'll pass it off to Councilwoman Strasburger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I apologize. I don't have my glasses on, so I can't see everyone sitting around the table on the screen at Public Safety. So I'll just say a general hello, good morning, and thank you for being here today. And I'll start with, I guess, Director Hisrich. If I've heard a lot from a lot of different people about the 5 new colonel positions, and I see where they fit into the organizational chart. Some would be overseeing zone command staff. Some would be one would be chief of staff. One would be more kind of an administrative bureau. I wanted to give you the opportunity to, in your own words, discuss the positions and thoughts that you have about them.
As I've talked to the chief of staff, the current chief of staff, my biggest priority was always to make sure that there are more officers on the street, especially with the retirements, officers resigning, et cetera. And knowing that we will potentially have a new class, once again, that's dependent on the new administration, of 30 to 40, I do believe there needs to be some additional administrative positions. The idea of the colonel, I personally don't care what we call them, but I do know sitting next to me is Deputy Chief Stan Grecky and the Assistant Chief of Operation. I mean, they are basically working, what do you figure, about 20 hours a day. So they certainly need some support, and there needs to be better coordination. As far as the chief of staff, I'm not really sure the chief of staff should be a position of a commander. It should be some higher position. As we work through revisioning or re-imaging police and public safety, I think there will be more work to be done, more coordination between the different zones and with the new administration. So I do feel that there will probably be a need for them, and there is probably a current need for to expand on the administrative side with Deputy Chief Stan Grecky and the Assistant Chief of Operations. Like I say, I really personally don't care what we call them, colonels, inspectors, majors, whatever, but it would be probably, if you look at it, it would be a net gain of 3 administrative positions, because you would probably be doing away with the commander which is currently the chief of staff, and the commander over OSAR. So it'd probably be only a net gain of three administrative positions. But once again, I think that there is a need for some additional help to assist, and we're experiencing, acting chief Stan Grecky is basically fulfilling 2 roles right now. So that's my two cents worth. There is in your org chart, if you are looking at the org chart, there is a correction in there. The colonel positions would be done by the radio channels, which are shared, which is also where the different zones are located, being at zone 3 and 6, and then an additional colonel over zone 4 and 5, and an additional colonel over 1 and 2. It was a typo in the organizational chart that you were provided.
Thank you. I'm trying to understand the difference between a colonel and an assistant chief. Because I see several assistant chiefs that seem to then be overseeing, one of which would be overseeing 3 colonel positions. But the colonel position seems to have a higher salary than the assistant chief. And I'm just trying to, we don't have to get into a long conversation now, but I'm just sort of thinking out loud around why not a couple more assistant chief positions rather than 5 new colonel positions or additional?
Yeah, the assistant chief, Councilwoman, the assistant chief is paid more than the colonel. And the idea was to have a.
Oh, I see. I apologize. I was looking at 2021 rather than 2022. My apologies.
Sure.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt if you wanted to continue.
No, the idea was that the Bureau currently has 3 assistant chiefs, as you mentioned, one over administration, one over operations, which would be responsible for the zones, of which there are 3 colonels over the 6 commanders, I believe it is, 7 commanders, and then the assistant chief of investigations, which would not have any colonels as listed under the assistant chief. So under the chief of police, there would be 2 colonels, one of which would be the current position of chief of staff, and then the office of strategy and accountability and resiliency, which is right now run by a commander.
I see. Okay. I'll keep asking questions and we can continue to discuss. I'm sure this will be a point of significant discussion among council members and your department. So thank you for those initial answers. A couple more questions. I see an increase of a crime analyst, 2 crime analyst positions in the next year's budget. And given the significant amount of analysis that's needed and the increased requirements that our new legislation, which I understand the Bureau is already undergoing when it comes to crime analysis and reporting out to the public. Do you think that 5 analysts and an analysis coordinator is enough to be able to meet those needs?
I'll let Assistant Director Lee Schmidt answer that question, since he's been dealing with strategy and trying to do a survey over there to try to figure out. And of course, as you mentioned, Councilwoman, there is additional work to be done to become more transparent as requested by council. So Lee?
Yeah. So Councilperson Strasburg, those positions, actually, we've had 5 for a number of years. 2 of the positions became vacant over COVID and they were removed from the budget because of budget cuts. This is to restore those positions back to 5. Knowing the operations, and as you said, the amount of data and the increased amount of data that we're trying to analyze, in future years, I think it would definitely be beneficial to add to that up to maybe 7 or so. We do have a couple grant funded positions, luckily, that we've been able to do in the past couple years. One is for domestic violence. The other is for gun violence. So those will be additional. And then there's also an additional position which Director Murphy is requesting, which you'll hear about in December, for a public safety overall to assist with some of that. So like I say, 5 is what we have had for a number of years. We get by with that, but in the future, we definitely are looking to increase that amount.
And also, if I may add, the requirements of not only the city council of the city, but both the state and the federal Department of Justice, they are always requesting more and more information. And, we're trying to do that as technologically based as we can. But as Lee mentioned, as more and more requests come out, we will probably have to expand the staffing level.
Sure. And I don't want to take more credit than credit is than due for what council has done. I understand that there was a lot of work in this regard underway already, and that there are requirements from the state and the federal level as well, and just also from the public. So I appreciate that. That's good to know that was a restoring of positions that were already in the previous budget. And then I wanted to dig in a little bit to this Hillman Foundation grant that has expired, and so therefore is necessitating shifts over to general or operating budget. Were these positions, so 1 sergeant, 1 officer, 1 civilian crime analyst, as part of a domestic violence unit grant. That was all part of the same grant that covered that for a year or a set of years, and now is being moved into operating.
It was, and the intent of the grant was for it to become a permanent city's position. So they initially funded it 100% and then reduced it year by year. I think there is still partial funding, more for training and administrative supplies, that kind of thing for that unit. But it was for us, the Bureau, to create its own domestic violence unit that works directly with the local centers to assist with follow-up and domestic violence, as well as that analyst that does the data specifically for domestic violence issues.
How many years was that grant? Do you know offhand?
I believe it was a 3-year. Some of that grant changed because we got a little bit of a late start on it, and then with COVID. But I thought it was a 3-year total grant.
Have you seen it make a significant difference? Has it been?
I would have to check with Assistant Chief Bickerstaff on that. I believe it has made an impact. I know the Hillman Foundation has been happy with it, as well as the Women's Shelter Center that has been working with the domestic violence unit.
Thank you. Last question is around capacity, and I know that there feels like there are never enough resources to go around. If we were able to see some changes at the state legislature to allow for, say, the implementation of speed cameras, big question mark as to whether we currently have authority or that window closed on red light cameras, and also unclear to me at this time if we are allowed to do ticket by mail, but certainly we don't have the ability to use radar. I know there are a lot of restrictions when it comes to traffic division, and our traffic division is smaller than it was, say, decades ago. But there's an increasing, actually on the radio as we speak, an increasing need for curtailing bad behavior on the roads, increase in national rates of car crashes due to speed, due to reckless driving, running red lights. And of course, humans in the police bureau can't be everywhere all at once. So if there was the potential to be able to, say, have city council and others lobby the state legislature, get these passed and implement this technology, would that be something that you would be in favor of?
Yes. Yeah, both myself and Deputy Chief Stan Gurecki agree that yes, by all means.
Okay. Thank you. Those are all my questions. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I believe we'll go to Council Member Coghill. I think he's at the edge of the table. Is that right?
That's me. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I can't see too much.
Congratulations. It's good to see Molly. She looks great. She looks healthy. She looks happy. So
she's keeping us awake. I haven't figured that part out yet, but I'll figure it out.
I'll bet she does. They keep you awake more when they're teenagers even, but you're going to be a good dad. We all know that.
Well, thank you.
So I'll start, Director Histrich, Mr. Stan Gurecki. I have my glasses, but I can't make out everybody else there, but I just want to thank you all for being here. First and foremost, it's no secret at this table that, I'm a big supporter of our public safety, our EMS, our firefighters, our police. They put their lives on the line, when they're out there. I believe they should be the best paid, with the best pensions and everything that comes along with it. So I just wanted to say this, Director Histrich, I have told you and I have told many at this table that I plan to insert myself into any police reform, whatever that might look like. Wasn't expecting it so soon, but Reverend Burgess has thrown down a bill to, similar to Philadelphia's. I will be in the talks tomorrow with you, and I'm looking forward to that. First and foremost, I want to make sure you have the confidence in me to be there.
By all means, we welcome yourself and any council member that wishes to participate. By all means, that we are always looking for input. When this all started several years ago, I along with the administration, we encouraged input from everyone involved, and we want to do what's right for the public. And I certainly would welcome your input, Councilman.
Yep. Well, thank you. And, we all believe in police reform. Many different variations of it, but I just want to be careful that any police reform we do is responsible and working in conjunction with public safety. I plan to hear your input. I want to be not only talking to you, but talking for you, if that's at all possible. So I look forward to those talks, and I do look forward to police reform. However, I will say I wasn't expecting it this soon. I was hoping that we would sit down at the table with Mr. Gainey when he takes office and, hear his visions and what he thinks about it. I haven't gotten any feedback as to whether he thinks that the newest bill on the table was good or not, but, we'll do all through that when we get time and, break that down. So I just wanted to make sure you knew that, I'll be front and center on all police reform talks, and I look forward to it. So let me get back to Local 449, the Steamfitters building for the SWAT team. I had heard, and Councilwoman Cale Smith, thank you, for always working with me, with the police union and as to what direction they go. And this lies in Councilwoman Cale Smith's district. But did I hear that we will not be holding, say, for instance, the Allegheny County Democratic Committee holds their votes there? Is that now going to be disallowed?
We'd have to talk to the Steamfitters about that. We're still trying to work through that part of the lease. But essentially, we will have full control of the properties there, other than the Labor Council is still remaining on site, in that one corner they have.
Right. That was my question. Mr. Kelly from the Labor Council, he and I have had many conversations about this. There are events there that he holds often, and there was always a good companionship between, the labor union and Local 449 in the way of using the parking lots, opening the hall up for access to what the Labor Council needs. I just want to be sure that cooperation is going to be there with Darren Kelly and the Labor Council.
This building's not a good fit. It's used.
Yeah, that's something we've kind of been leaving up to the Steamfitters to handle, because it's their property and their facility, and then come back to us with some resolutions on that. But
okay, well, I count on you talking to Darren Kelly about this and, working in cooperation with him. We are going to be leasing it, so I guess it would be our decision as to who uses that hall and what capacity the parking lots are used for, whatever events might go on there. I just want to make sure we work with him. That's a big piece of property. There's a lot of parking there. And we, in the South Hills, at least, it's a very convenient spot for us to hold events and to meet, things of that nature. So before we, go any further, I just want to make sure we talk to the Labor Council about that. And I'm sure we'll straighten that out. So
yeah, I know Mr. Kelly has talked to Director Histrich, and we are aware of that. We'll make sure we have.
I count on that. I believe in you.
I think we're going to see the agreement, and then we're going to have to discuss whether we want to move forward with it.
Okay. Yeah. As Councilwoman Cale Smith just said, we'll see the agreement. We just want to make sure there's some verbiage in there as to, access for the Labor Council and any events that we hold there.
Yeah, we just have to make sure it's, as woman.
I'm sorry. Hold on. Let me defer to Councilwoman Cale Smith.
I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is I want to make sure we're protecting our police and not putting them in a difficult situation. They're not allowed to be involved in politics. If there's a way we could maybe, separate the hall from the building, close it off, something that we can just say that this part is something they're not allowed to use. Maybe that's it. Or maybe they just have to vacate by a certain time before we have an event. Something, we have to have something in writing to protect them as well.
Okay. Understand. Yeah, absolutely. We don't want to cross any lines, but at the same time, we want to make it available.
Yeah, that is our intention, is to make sure we're within guidelines of the law and how police are involved. Obviously, the police have to be in upstairs areas and in some of the other areas, but due to police regulations, we also have to make sure all those areas are separated from the general public anyhow. So we are building some walls so that hall would be isolated from any actual police property. It would just be a shared space. And as far as the parking lots go, we do have a couple areas that we're going to have sectioned off for police use only, but other areas, there's still quite a bit of parking there, as you all know. Those will still be accessible and used for the Labor Council. So.
Okay, that's good. I'm sure we'll work out those details. And there's plenty of parking there for pretty much everybody, I think. You know, Councilwoman Gross had brought up to me a little while ago about her shooting range out in Bloomfield. Is it Bloomfield or is it in Highland Park? Right. So, you know, and I had many conversations with her about this, and I know it echoes through the valleys there and in throughout the neighborhoods. And I was just wondering, is the 449 a potential spot for us to, you know, transfer our shooting range to? I mean, I know the area very well. I know it's surrounded by woods and mountains. There is a small neighborhood there of about 6 or 8 houses. So, so I just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
I haven't done any studies on that, but I don't know that there's enough area to be able to shoot. And of course, you know, prior to moving a gun range, I certainly would want to do studies. I don't want to make the same mistake that was done up in Highland Park area. I mean, we have done a study, I'm sure Councilwoman Gross knows that, to try to decrease the noise there. I'm hoping that by 2023, that work has begun on the remediation and to try to curtail the noise. I mean, of course, you know, we have taken over the property of the VA, and I know it's long range, but the whole idea is to move all the shooting range, interior shooting range up there and to build that. And I've asked for that to be a priority when the building does start. So, I mean, it is an option, but I don't know, just going out to the Steamfitters area twice now, I don't really know that there would be enough area to do a firing range. And to be honest with you, the property that we are obtaining already, and we've already designated area for not only SWAT, but for other components of the Special Deployment Division as well. I hate to say it, but we're already running out of land and we haven't even moved into it yet. So, but like I said, the long-term plan years down the road is to move the firing range up to the VA. The short-term plan, hopefully in a year or two, is to be able to mitigate a lot of the noise that they're hearing in Highland Park.
Yes, and I'll tell you, Director Histrich, when I speak of 449 for the firing range, I don't know what type of space you need to have an indoor facility. Obviously, you know, that would be best for noise and preventing the same problem, you know, that you have out in Highland Park as far as people hearing, you know, the gunfire. So I don't know if you've been through. Have you been inside the building? Because it's really big inside the first floor.
Yes, I've taken a tour of it, and like I say, a lot of the area, and you know, it's not only moving the SWAT component there. We're moving, you know, accident or collision investigation. We're moving the motorcycles. We're moving a lot of other components of the Special Deployment Division within the area that we've obtained. So, and you know, building a firing range, as I'm sure you're aware of, Mr. Coghill, is a very delicate situation. You have to worry about the lead. You have to worry about noise on the other employees within the facility, and it's very complicated. But you know, we certainly could look into it.
Okay, and I agree with you. The new facility, and I don't know how many years it will be before we get up there, but that would be the ideal spot. However, yeah, if you could look into that, that would be great. I love the building. I think it serves your purpose. You have classrooms, you have plenty of garage indoor parking. So, you know, and I think we're in a 5-year lease with that. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And part of the lease going into a 5-year lease was because we are anticipating Washington Boulevard to have the new facility, right?
Yes, I hope so. If we can find the appropriate funding for it, yes.
Right. And we don't know how many years that might be down the road, but obviously 5 years will keep us, you know, in good shape for what you need it for. and we can always extend it after that. Okay, that's it for as far as 449 goes. I did want to address one thing. I think as it stands now, we have 248 or so police officers who could retire tomorrow if they'd like.
Yeah, that number's correct.
Okay. And I see, the numbers throughout the years, police officers leaving for other departments for better pay. And much like what, Madam President brought up as to boots on the ground, and reinforcing our troops on the ground. I would like to see that more so than management positions. But at the same time, I also have many commanders, many people I talk to on the force commanders in specific, because as it is now, as a lieutenant, we know you can work as much overtime as possibly you're granted. And that really increases your pay. And I think a lot of the ones who want to work hard and make extra money, they are quick to take that overtime. Whereas a lieutenant, you could make a lot more money than a current commander, really, because commanders are not permitted for overtime, right?
Some degree they can work, earn some overtime through secondary employment.
Yeah, over the last year or two, that is true. However, if it's a secondary employment, i.e. the Steeler game or a special event, marathon, etc., we have allowed commanders to receive overtime at the special event rate, supplement their income somewhat.
Okay, I know they were bucking for a 20% raise. We have in the budget a 15% raise. So if it comes down to, moving money around or not having the corporals or having one or two of them instead of 5 to make that happen, I would very much like to see that happen. They want to serve in that position because they're proud of that position and they want to serve the community there. And they made it there because they're good leaders, but I hate to see it affect their income that they're used to. So just wanted to bring that to your attention. So, that's really it for me. I just wanted to thank you. Director Hisrich, I think you've done a great job, through this past 4 years that I've been here at least. Mr. Stan Grecki, Mr. Schubert, I know you guys very well. I know the job that you do. We're a safer city because of you, and you can always count on my support. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councilman. I will now pass it off to Councilwoman Gross.
Thank you, Mr. O'Connor. And also, did you notice in chambers on your tiny screen, we've been joined by Councilman Wilson.
Oh, sorry, I did not see. I'll go to Councilman Wilson next. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a number of questions, and some of them follow along the same lines, where I'm trying to match the org chart to the parts of the budget. Sometimes just the labels aren't exactly the same, and just for the public to be able to understand where their money is going. But I can't tell from the org chart, which is maybe on page 181 of the printed budget, for just Bureau of Police, is when we keep saying, I think we've said 3 or 4 council members now, and I think Director Hisrich as well, when we want more boots on the ground, or we want to be sure that we're investing in the officers on the street and not have a top-heavy administration. In this org chart, if you all have it in front of you, it's on page 181. It's really hard to see which one of these boxes are boots on the ground and which ones aren't. Could you help us understand the org chart? Can I draw, for example, a simple line across it and everyone below assistant chief is boots on the ground? But not the way it's arranged, because there's a telephone reporting unit. Is that boots on the ground? Record room, property room, those are kind of lower on the page.
Yeah.
So it's just one quadrant of the page that are actual people that we think of as either on the streets or responding to calls, maybe is what when we say boots on the ground or, people on the street, officers on the street, are we talking about really like the people who are publicly facing and interacting with 911 calls?
Well, I think what we have to look at the definition of boots on the ground. I mean, if you're looking at the administrative staff that are probably in the office most of the time, however, I mean, Chief Stan Grecki and Chief Schubert, I mean, probably 95% of the time they're in the office, but, they still respond to calls. But anyway, I think what you're probably getting at here is probably below the assistant chief level is actual officers, even though the commanders, or a lieutenant would spend time in the office, they're the ones day in and day out that are actually responding to incidents. I mean, the exception would be under investigations. I mean, you do have major crimes and, detectives, a lot of times, they're spending time in the office, but when there's a homicide or there's a violent crime, they're out on the street. Even if you go above the assistant chief level, fleet operations, they're the ones that actually, they support the day in and day out activity of the officers to make sure that they have vehicles equipped to respond to calls. So what you really need to do, I think, is probably go to, 184 and look at that, and everything below what currently would be the assistant chief position, in most cases, as far as officers, should be out in the street the majority of their time responding to calls and handling the day-to-day public interaction. So,
but is that I do have page 184, but then there's a gap under police officer first year, and you get to crime analysis coordinator, crime analyst, and dispatcher cashier. Well, that is not the top of the org chart. Are they publicly facing? And so there are maybe, there's two kinds of investments to be made in the boots. Boots may be on the ground and boots in the office, but they're still in boots. You see what I'm saying? I have a really bad Zoom screen that keeps my face on camera, or I have a really good Zoom screen that looks to the side of my head. So I apologize sometimes for switching back and forth between the screens while I'm trying to talk to you.
Yeah, like I say, if you're asking for who answers the 911 calls on a daily basis, I mean, if you go under Assistant Chief of Operations and you go to the zones, those officers there are the ones that answer calls day in and day out.
Right.
They're always, I would say 98, 99%, they're the people, the officers that, that go and respond to calls. But at the same time, you can't eliminate the investigation side or the, telephone reporting unit, even though that they don't come out, a lot of reports are taken now telephonically by several officers and support staff in an office. So, there's not personal interaction, but there is that interaction with the public. If you have a hubcap stolen or something stolen from your front yard, they can easily do it telephonically instead of waiting for an officer to come from a zone. And
I drew a kind of pink box, but then I realized I'd drawn it up too high, and I'm not supposed to include the assistant chief. And then I realized we have the kind of questionable colonel level here that we're not too sure about. So really, but from the commanders down is what you said are really the kind of 90% plus of the time who is boots on the ground and publicly facing, and that maybe this is where there's additional people or additional dollars that we're worried about. So when Councilman Coghill says there was 253, 247 people retiring, I wonder, boy, that's really choppy. It freezes up on these Zoom screens and thing. eligible to retire. Are those people here? Are they here? Are they here? Are they here? We don't know, but I would like to know, and I'm sure you know, because I know you guys keep very careful information about eligible retirements, which is extremely helpful. But I will always try to break down, information into more actionable bits when I'm presented with it. And then another point that I think it's important to raise, we spent a lot of time last year talking about it. We heard a lot of public testimony about defunding the police and questioning, as a city council, our residents questioned how we're allocating their city budget. And I want to make sure that we acknowledge that and address it a little bit. One of the pieces of information that I updated last year, and I don't have updated this year, was based on a Governing Magazine article from 2015 that had a chart of we made a chart of 14 of the cities that we regularly compare ourselves to, our benchmark cities. And it showed that there are, of those 14 cities, many who have smaller police bureaus than us, some that are relatively the same size, and a few that are a little larger, not that much larger. Per capita in that chart was per 10,000 people. But that even in the cities that are of comparable size of bureaus, many of them had a smaller ratio of officers to total Bureau of Police employees. And so when I look at this org chart and I see so many people who aren't on the ground, boots are not on the ground, but maybe under a desk. We have an extraordinarily high, over 90%, I think, of your total employment in the Bureau of Police are full officers. Could you speak to your ratio of civilians to total employees in the Bureau for us?
Yeah, the problem is, and we've addressed this, and we are addressing it in the upcoming or the next year with a staffing study. And while Tom is trying to work the numbers here, the problem with what you're saying is true. However, the problem is trying to hire civilian support staff. No one wants the job. And that is a problem because the pay is not that great in the city of Pittsburgh. So as a result, a lot of positions which could be civilianized can't be because of the pay, and we wind up using officers for basically those jobs. I mean, as I've discussed in previous years, I mean, I would like to bring on, professional photographers to do crime scenes, or people that are able to do latent prints, or, officers that can staff civilians that could staff the property room. But nobody wants these jobs at the pay that the city's offering. So as a result, we have to utilize police officers because, number one, they're paid higher. And number two, I think a lot of what we're doing could be supervised by an officer, but we could hire civilians that are subject matter experts in their area. And that is part of what hopefully the staffing study will come back with. And hopefully, if council decides to make some changes and up the pay for civilians, we would be more in line with the study that you're reading, Councilwoman. So I don't know if Tom has figured it out. I know he's been doing some adding here, but I'll turn it over to him.
Thank you, Director. I have some rough numbers for you. Operations comprises where the majority of officers, supervisors, and there are some plainclothes detectives assigned. So zones 1 through 6 and Special Deployment Division, which includes the motorcycles and other units, comprise probably about 650 of our total personnel. Investigations is responsible for follow-up on major crimes, narcotics investigations, and some other areas. There's approximately 100 in major crimes and approximately 50 or so in narcotics and vice.
I was distracted by my dinging phone for a second. Did you say 100 in major crimes?
Yes, give or take some. These are rough numbers, just to give you a perspective.
Thank you. And then you gave a number for narcotics and vice.
Approximately 50.
Got it. And then, so just kind of going across, and so then Assistant Chief Administration, but not and Public Safety Administration, Bureau of Police Administration. You've got like Commander Training Academy, Command Support Services. Are those things that I'm not intimately familiar with your daily operations, but look to me like the kinds of things like a telephone reporting unit, computer operations, wellness, record room, property room. Are you telling me that right now those are officers?
For the most part, they are. So our training academy consists of approximately 16 sworn members of the Bureau of Police. So when we do have an academy class in, or even mandatory in-service training classes, they conduct that training. And then on the other side, the support services, we have a number of officers assigned to the warrant office. We also use some of our officers who are not full duty because they've been injured to take reports over the telephone. We staff the property room and some other units. And as Director Hisrick alluded to, if we're able to attract some civilians, we can replace officers somewhere along the line with civilians.
I would love nothing better to be able to take when we have an academy class or recertification, to be able to hire, say, retired officers as firearms instructors. I mean, the FBI went through that. They needed more agents on the street, and they brought back basically retired officers or retired law enforcement to conduct firearms training under the guidance and supervision of an officer, or, in the FBI's case, a supervisory special agent. So I think there is possibility to be able to put more officers on the street, providing that the pay is there and that they're adequately qualified to fulfill that position. The ratio the city has is totally bad. I mean, compared to other law enforcement agencies, whether it's federal, state, or local. I mean, in most cases, as you mentioned, there's a strong civilian staff to support the officers and investigators that are on the street. And that is not the case here in the city.
Interesting. And then also you mentioned, if we increase the civilian pay, one of the reasons officers can take these jobs that civilians might do is that they are paid more. That's partly because of their FOP contract. But in looking at the substantial overtime pay and the overtime trust fund, do those officers, of the officers who do overtime, does that include some of these officers who are doing the jobs that might be done by civilians? So you not only are getting paid more than the civilian would be if you're at the telephone reporting unit, then also you are an officer, so you can do the kind of overtime and premium pay, which kind of leads me into my next question. Since those are separate parts of the budget, to also define for us, what is overtime pay and what is premium pay? And then also, if you could answer my question of are the officers who might be replaced by civilians also doing the work of, the kind of overtime and special events, maybe possibly too, just to remind the public. So for example, if there are officers who are opting into the cover your assets kind of work, and describe that for us.
Yeah, I'll turn it over to Lee, but I mean, all officers, as long as they're, they're not on light duty or eligible to work special events or overtime. So, Lee?
So just a few things. Let me just kind of make sure I'm trying to cover everything. I don't have all of it, but so as far as civilians in police in positions that could potentially be civilianized, that is one thing we are hoping the staffing study does. So the last staffing study for the police bureau was in 2005. Obviously, in the past, 15 years plus years since that staffing study was completed, there's been a lot of changes with laws, technology, how police interact, and as well as what civilians are able to do in a law enforcement capacity. Specifically the telephone reporting unit, there are some civilians in there that assist with reporting, but however, due to state laws, they can't follow up and do certain things. So that's why we have to have officers. A good example of where a civilian can come in is the director stated is property room, evidence collection and investigation. That's a forensic specialist normally. Right now, at this point, we don't have that budgeted. We have to kind of work with that, with HR to build those positions, which is another thing where the goal of this staffing study is to help us create these positions, to decide what they should be paid, so then we can present it in the budget properly. Currently, the civilian positions we have, many of them make $40,000 a year or less. If you get somebody that has a degree in forensic investigations or forensics evidence collection, they can easily go in the private sector or even in state or county or other areas and make $100,000. Same with, computer and cyber investigations and forensic investigations on that end. The IT industry pays significantly more. Our officers take these positions or put in these positions, and they may have opportunity to make overtime, but their base salary, is for a regular officers or a detective, as an example, in a forensic is around $70,000, $80,000 a year. So that's significantly less than $100,000 that a civilian could potentially garner if they went elsewhere. Those are things we have to review. I agree with you that we have to consider overtime in that. We also, as we build positions for civilians, as you know, those can be unionized as well. So we have to consider those costs and factors. And then we do have to work with the FOP as we change positions around and bargain with them on that.
So for council's consideration, even though we budget significantly lower for these civilian positions that could be civilianized, we're paying possibly double what we budgeted for. I say that right? I just kind of made that's kind of a rough estimate here, but because there are officers in this position, they're not only paying what the officer pay is, we're paying them what their officer pay is according to their contract, but then they're also pulling some of that overtime and premium pay that might go to other officers. That if we just paid a higher civilian salary, we wouldn't actually be paying more.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you on that. That is,
Okay.
It is, and that's part of it is if we could get civilians in these positions, that would free officers up to do more, boots on the ground, as you say.
So just to say it more simply, the civilian from the telephone reporting unit couldn't go actually help the residents in Sheridan whose porches we're going to go sit on, right? But if we free up those officers, they could.
Correct, but
So,
civilians take the same reports either, that's all.
yeah, so that's interesting. And we don't have to pay for them to go through our police academy because they're civilians. So we save that cost as well. So I just wanted to make sure that we illuminated that and elucidated that a little more in more detail. So I appreciate you delving into that. And could you just briefly, because I actually want to shift topics, but could you briefly define for us, because they are two separate budget lines, what is overtime pay and what is premium pay?
So premium pay is also considered for holiday pay. Special events sometimes, when there's an event on a holiday versus just regular straight up overtime.
There's also secondary employment pay too.
Okay, thank you. Actually, I'd forgotten that's the word I've been searching for when I was saying overtime. The secondary employment is the cover your assets where an officer can opt into an assignment and it is additive and additional
Yes.
salary.
Correct, but that's normally funded through a contractor. I mean, it does go to the officer's salary, but the city does not
Right.
Pay for that. That actually gets billed, as you stated.
Billed
It's no longer
event,
covered.
permit.
So
Sure.
just-
Right. Right. So for major events, the city has permitting fees and those fees are covering that secondary employment.
Well, they get paid for the person.
If there's a sponsor.
Right.
Yep. So yeah, that's actually, so we've talked about this, I think every year that I've been at council about how we have, is this the way we should be doing it instead of just increasing salaries? So just kind of to bring that up again without really a clear answer. But can I shift topics for a minute? Earlier this fall, a homeless resident in District 7 died after police encounter. Miss Jim Rogers was tased repeatedly in Friendship. And the way it was reported, when he was taken to the hospital, he died before he was in hospital care. There have been rallies for him. There have been memorials for him. And what I think a lot of people are wondering is, a year ago, we talked a lot about having social service workers and social workers, or mental health and homeless experts assisting the police, responding to these kinds of calls. Where are we with that? I mean, do we have social workers? It's been a full year since we sat and post agendas and briefings on this. And we haven't heard, I don't know where we are with it. So if you could speak to that for a minute. That is the exact kind of police reform we were promised. And it is the exact kind of shift that we've said we were going to make, and it might have saved Mr. Rogers' life. So if you could speak to that.
We're working on that with the SDHS.
Yeah, unfortunately, things don't happen overnight. And, I will say that there's, the mayor did start the Office of Health and Safety. And we are working with them on a regular basis. They are going through an interview process right now to hire social workers. I mean, downtown, through the cooperation of Allegheny Health Network, there are people on the street now responding. The hope down the road is that the social workers will be embedded with police officers. However, it's, number one, we had to arrange the funding, which, through the Stop the Violence and through some other foundation money, it's just a slow process. That is our hope. We have been we had a conversation with Harris County, Texas, 2 weeks ago on the program that they have. There's a lot of logistics that needs to be done on how they're going to be dispatched, through whether it's going to be through a 911 system or a 311 or working with the county on another number that they're working on. So it is moving forward. I know it's not as fast as what everybody would like, but the thing that I want to make sure is that we do it right, and there will be hiccups, shall we say, but when I say do it right, I certainly don't want to put anyone in danger. And there are many calls, and I won't go into the details regarding Mr. Rogers, but calls similar to that. I mean, you can't just send a social worker by him or herself because there is always that potential violence. And that is one of the logistics that we're working on right now, is to make sure that it's a cooperative effort between police officers, law enforcement officers, and the social workers. And hopefully, if the system's done appropriately, you know, we'll be able, to prevent, number one, the call coming in, and originally, you know, if it's done appropriately with the cooperation of the city and the county, that we'll be able to help homeless people and make sure that they get into shelters or get the food or get their needs taken care of, and there'll be no need for 911. But if in fact they do call 911 for a mental health issue, that the appropriate assets will be dispatched, and that everybody, to include the individual that made the call, is protected and handled safely. And that's where we're at on it. It is, even though you're not hearing things, there are a lot happening behind the scenes to make the program work and to make it work correctly. And hopefully very shortly, and I say very shortly loosely, whether it's going to be several months or, you know, half a year, that we will get that program up and running. And like I said, there's already test programs going on in the city and downtown area as we speak.
So there are test programs going on. So if last year, a year ago, we were at 0, and if 100% would be, we actually are responding to 911 calls with social service when they're mental health calls, and we actually do have people writing along to intervene. Where are we on a scale of 0 to 100?
I just want to start by saying that we are deeply saddened about the loss of Mr. Rogers, and definitely are looking deeper into how we can make sure that things like this don't happen again. That's why it's imperative that we feel it's imperative that OCHS is put under public safety, so that we can make sure that this process is rolled out in the most effective way. From a scale of, I guess, 0 to 100, where we are in that rollout, I cannot give you an accurate number right now, but I will have those updates available for you when we do meet and we talk about OCHS more in depth, and the Stop the Violence Trust Fund and initiatives that are coming out of that trust fund when we meet on the 6th of December.
Seems to me we established the trust fund a year ago as well. That initial transfer of funds was immediate 12 months ago.
And we had to go through the process of evaluating which models we wanted to use, what type of staff and how much staff is needed. Did we have that partnership with police to make sure that this program is effective? So once we got the money, we were able to start doing the work on the back end to make sure that we had everything that we needed internally, so that we can prepare to roll out programming externally.
And also remember that the trust fund is not only for the Office of Health and Safety, it's for Stop the Violence program, which has been going on continuously. And that's a whole nother area that, trying to prevent, gangs and group violence intervention. And, that money is broken up into 2 parts, as, Reverend Burgess has delegated or designated the money. So, I mean, the money on the Office of Health and Safety was just, basically moved over to that office when it started. So even though the trust fund's been in existence for some time, that was not the primary use for the Stop the Violence Trust Fund.
Okay. Well, suffice to say, we don't seem to be responding well to mental health issues, right? And we knew this a year ago. We still know this, and we have we want to see results, and so we're going to keep asking those questions.
Yeah, and woman, like I said, we're really not prepared today to give you the numbers and the facts. I mean, that's more of the December 6th hearing with the trust fund and the Office of Health and Safety. So we will be a little bit more prepared to answer your questions on that date.
I'm going to kind of skip over and not ask you questions, but I'm going to just read some notes that I wrote down when I was listening to other members speak, which is that we know that there are, again, ways that we can balance out for better outcomes, but also for better budgeting. The tensions that draw the resources away, the boots on the ground resources away. So we talked about like different parts of the org chart, but earlier it was mentioned, demands that Carson Street and the nighttime economy activities that create public safety problems, that as its own kind of issue. We talked about traffic and traffic stops as an issue where we could, if we were allowed by the state, we could save time budget and dollar budget of officers' time. And the other one that I'm just going to kind of leave, but I'm going to acknowledge here is this whole issue around special events, secondary employment. We know that that also takes officers' time. Again, it's a complicated issue because our pay scales are lower. And so that is adding in an informal way to the pay scales because they are inadequate compared to the municipalities we are competing with. So there's a whole can of worms there that I'm going to just acknowledge and then move on to. And one of the other questions I think that was kind of on the table amongst us, but didn't get onto camera for you, was going back to the colonel positions. It's really not just positions. It's literally a new part of the organizational chart that's being created, right? What are the qualifications? Do you all have kind of job descriptions there for that new colonel position? Part of the org chart?
That is currently being developed. Like I said, the budget hearing came before the job posting and requirements. There's ideas, but it has not been formalized yet with the administration, the police, or HR.
And so like who's writing the job description and the qualifications? Are you all three at the table, HR, police, and the mayor's office?
That would be correct, I would hope, yes.
Okay, that wraps it up for me. Sorry, I know that was a lot of detail, but I think it really helped us understand some of the places where we're spending time, like in a time budget sense, and having positions and spending dollars. So I'm gonna stop my questioning there. Thank you all. Thank you, Corey. Councilman O'Connor, back to you.
Can everybody hear me? I don't know what's going on with my computer.
Yeah, we can hear you. Councilman O'Connor, you went away. I heard you ask if we could hear you,
Yeah,
but
sorry,
now.
for some reason it went in and out there. But no, I thought you were done with your questioning and I was passing it off to Councilman Wilson for his line of questioning.
You go. Okay, thank you, Councilman. And thank you to everyone on the public safety side that's here. I think I'll just pick up where Councilman Gross left off. You brought up where we're at with the, I believe you referenced the social worker. So specifically, a year ago, we got some funding from the federal level to do, based on knowing that because of the pandemic, there will be evictions, and we entered into a contract with AHN to provide, I guess, what they were coining as like upstream support so that people wouldn't experience homelessness as much as we're currently seeing. That turned into that was 3 zones. I'm not sure if that's exactly how we got to, the current state of the program, which is what we're now spending. We will be spending $10 million on over the course of 3 years, and that would expand to all zones. And so what I'm referring to is the AHN Urban Poverty and Homelessness Program. I've had the opportunity to be through a few different people that are in command at Zone 1. And there was the first commander, and then he went and moved into another division within the Pittsburgh Police Bureau. And then I had an acting lieutenant, and now I have a new commander. We work great together, and I think that there's a lot of opportunity there to utilize the program within my zone, and I've been able to see how they've been effective. But I'm going to use this opportunity to just ask directly about how how it's structured within the Pittsburgh Police Bureau. Specifically, whether I had the acting commander or now I have a new commander, they seem to be unaware of this program. And I'd like to know why we don't have this top-down approach of literally the chief giving the directive of like, we are coordinating with this program and we want to see, you're like, I shouldn't have to bring it up. So I shouldn't have to bring it up with Zone 1. Like I expect them to be fully, realize what's going on with the program, and they're tapped into every patient that they're working with. And so I find myself trying to be a champion of the program, but also really I shouldn't be the one that has to interface and bring this up to whether it's the acting commander or the new commander. And I don't fault them. I'm just really asking the question, like, what is the directive from the top on this?
Yeah, well, there's a few issues here. Number one was brought up in the beginning of this. This is the AHN program. There's legalities. A lot of times the information cannot be shared with them due to state law. Secondly, your new commander, I mean, he's been there, 3 weeks. So, but the biggest problem that we are facing is the coordination issue of not, the Office of Health and Safety is, separate than public safety. And there is a coordination issue. I will caution that once again, we keep going back to all this money having to do with, the money is out of the Stop the Violence Trust Fund, which is allocated to the Office of Health and Safety.
Not this money.
No, that's
Which money are you talking? The AHN money?
Yeah, it's 10 million.
Yeah, the AH money is separate.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
that's been run through the mayor's office, not through public safety.
Yeah.
So we have very little knowledge of the agreement there or understanding. Again, it's through the mayor's office and OCHS. We have kind of a high level overview of it, but
Maybe this will get lost in translation since Chief Schubert isn't here. But, the AHN Urban Poverty and Homelessness program, they now have sites within each zone that they're working in. So they have an actual office on the ground. We've been sending outreach workers, and they have been working with co-response with police, or they respond directly from 301. If any resident, I should say this out loud, if any resident is concerned with someone who is experiencing homelessness, they can go right to 301. They can go under public safety, and there's another box that says homeless, and they can click that. And there's not an officer that shows up. There is an AHN outreach worker that shows up to try and offer services. So it is known that this program is, supposed to be in coordination. That's why I'm kind of curious on, how can we give a better directive at the top so that all these patients that they're working with and they're collecting data on them. It is a healthcare network that we're coordinating with, that they what they do their case conferencing, and how we can get that direct directive from the top to let each zone know that we should be doing this case conferencing.
All right.
No, I can talk with Chief Schubert about the program so that we can educate our officers on that program.
I think the overall issue, and we've been alluding to it, I guess, all morning at this point, is that there needs to be more coordination between leadership, between offices. Right now, what's taking place is any zone that AHN may have presence in, there is a relationship with a sergeant, a lieutenant, and sometimes a commander, and OCHS is communicating directly in that fashion to meet with the specific officers that would be directly supporting that program or that initiative. As Chief Sangrecki said, they're typically when things like this happen, or there's a program that we need to support, a new initiative that is citywide, conversations are had with leadership, memos are sent out, and then assessment of training is determined if there is a training need at all. That did not take place, and that's why we keep stating that further coordination is needed. We are trying to make sure that that happens so that you, Councilman Wilson, will never have to ask these questions again as to why, a new commander is coming into your zone and might not have full working knowledge of a program that is currently existing in that zone.
Okay, I just wanted to bring it up because it's been bothering me, obviously.
Yeah.
I just want to, make sure that because these are the public dollars, we're investing in $10 million over the course of the next 3 years. And from my understanding, this is something that, will help not only people who are experiencing homelessness, but also mental health issues and substance use disorder. And they really help the conversation with the public as well, because, the public is, concerned about citizens in this, they like to see citizens being treated in a certain way. And it just helps with the whole conversation. And from my understanding, it's been it has been, good to see in specifically Zone 1, our NROs, the neighborhood resource officers, be on board with it. I just want to make sure that we're now, as we move forward with this additional funding, that we're talking about how we're really going to be invested in this. And there's going to be a directive and really an understanding through each zone that how we're going to coordinate this. I know Mr. Rogers has brought up, I think that, it's important to note that we have, I believe that zone is covered. That's part of the zone that's covered with AHN. And so, like I said about each individual zone that does have this program, that we are looking to give the directive about how we're talking about the people that they're working with within that zone. And it should be more just than the NRO. It should be more of, all officers that are on duty, that are on the ground, that may, confront one of the individuals that they're working with. And so I think it's really important. I know this isn't a budgetary, it is and it's not, it is and it's not, but I think just now we have people at the table. I just wanted to bring this up because it's important to the city of Pittsburgh and it's important to the residents. And I believe it's important to the Pittsburgh Bureau of Police. So I just wanted to make that known.
Amen. All right. Yes, thank you. Like I say, as I mentioned at the very start, there's going to be hiccups along the way. And obviously, we have a lot of work to do on the coordination issues. So like I said, any new program, we're trying to do it right. However, like I said, there is, and Chief Sangrecki will get the appropriate memos out to all the commanders so that they are aware of the program.
Thank you. All right. Well, I look forward to working with you on this.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Director and council members. Just the one follow-up I would probably say, and I think Councilwoman Strasburger mentioned it, but the transparency and the bills that we introduced and passed with council a couple weeks ago, I want to thank the director and his staff for helping us with that. I think transparency is obviously a big conversation, and I know moving forward with police, I heard that, you know, the colonel conversation will probably happen in the next few weeks. But now let me pass it back to Mr. Strelick to go through EMS, and thank you everybody from the police force for signing on with us. So Mike, take it away.
Thank you, Councilman. The Bureau of Emergency Medical Services is dedicated to the reduction of morbidity and mortality of residents and visitors through the provision of advanced and basic life support pre-hospital care, medical directed rescue, and transportation of the ill and injured. As of the third quarter report, EMS had 205 staff on the payroll, of which all but 2 were frontline paramedics and EMTs and the higher level chiefs and assistant chiefs. For the 2022 proposed budget, EMS's overall budget is $27,647,515. That's an increase of 5% from 2021's reopened budget. Again, there's 213 positions. That's exactly the same as proposed in 2021. 2 administrative staff. The rest of them is frontline EMS personnel. The non-salary lines just changed across 3 line items. Net increase of about 10%. Machinery and equipment increased by $146,000. That's rescue tools. Operational supplies increased by $63,000. It increased, but it's the same amount that we had anticipated increasing in last year's 5-year plan. And property services also increases by $31,500. That's for security control system for EMS stations. I believe, again, there was a capital request that made its way into the operating budget. EMS does have one revenue, and it's a large one, $13.4 million about it for medical services revenue. That's a 1.8% increase on what we budgeted in 2021. There's a couple of capital line items not under the control of the EMS chief, but affecting EMS. In the capital acquisition line item, there is funding for 2 ambulance remounts, special events ambulance, and some boat insurance. And as it's not in the budget, but as we learned yesterday in OMB's budget hearing, will also be a 4th ambulance that's going to be repaired from one that wrecked. There's also Medic 4 construction that's on the north side under DPW facilities. It's $2.3 million in the 2022 budget, although I believe there's funding in the out years and there's existing funding. So it's more than a $2.3 million building. EMS has 2 trust funds, the EMS reimbursable event. So when we send our ambulances to go cover Heinz Field and those large events, it's about $1.6 million in there as of last week. And the hazmat trust fund, about $110,000. And that's it for the 2022 proposed budget. So turn it back to Director Hisrich and EMS staff.
All right, joining me on my left, your right, is Chief Ron Romano of EMS, and alongside him is Deputy Chief Amir Gilchrist. So I'll turn it over to Chief Romano for his short statement, right?
Yes.
Yes, for a short statement.
Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to start by thanking the EMS personnel that work in the Bureau of EMS, the EMTs, paramedics, crew chiefs, the district chiefs, my administrative staff for the hard work that's been done on a normal basis, let alone during the pandemic. The fine work that we've been doing under a lot of stressful situations coming up on 2 years. Great people doing great work every day. Pittsburgh EMS also received once again the 4th year in a row the Golden Plus Mission Lifeline Award from the American Heart Association for STEMI care. That's another great honor for the people, the personnel. The pandemic operations, which I mentioned, we've transported over 1,300 confirmed cases that we know of. We've implemented the Pittsburgh EMS stroke project. We're getting great results from that. And we're restarting the infant safe sleep program. Our penetration trauma program has a 95% survival from January to August of this year. I want to thank council for their continued support. I do have some vehicle issues if anybody wants to discuss that. Chief Gilbert, Chief Gilbert, anything?
The only thing I wanted to add was our operational budget. We just would like to thank all the hard work that was done implementing some of the projects that we were trying to get done, including with the rescue tools, the rapid extrication tools, as the chief mentioned. You know, our goal is to serve the residents of the city, and with these rapid extrication tools, it'll give the medics faster access to trapped, injured, and ill patients. We also, for the last couple of years, have tried diligently to have more security at our buildings, and we were allotted monies to have all of our stations outfitted with security systems to keep our crews safe. Other than that, vehicle-wise, as the chief mentioned, is one of our biggest concerns moving forward, since we have not been able to get replacements and we have an aging fleet that's deteriorating. That's all I have.
All right, back to you, Councilman O'Connor.
Thank you. In chambers, I know I can hear Councilman Coghill and there's Councilman Wilson. I can just go around the table, or does any members have questions?
I guess I can start there, Mr.
Okay.
Chair, if it's okay. You there, Cor?
Yes,
Okay.
you can go. Yeah, good to go.
Okay.
Good to go.
Thank you. Thank you. So I first of all, I want to thank you for what you do. You know, I have so much confidence in our public safety overall. EMS has, you know, I get nothing but great positive feedback on the interactions with people. You know, I can't say enough about your department. I do want you to know, Chief Romano, I made a hard sale for vehicles with the Equipment Leasing Authority yesterday. We talked a little bit about as to, you know, what you have coming and what you have. So I hear that loud and clear. You know, that's why I'm here. I really want to know, you know, what it is that you need to, so you're better equipped out there. I think what they told me was, you know, there was 2 new vehicles, and I see here that are being with the remounts, and 1 special event ambulance. And I guess I just want to hear from you all, you know, what do we need to bring the vehicles up to speed, whether it's repairs or new vehicles? Because, you know, I want to continue to fight for that and make sure you have exactly what you need. It's a very critical department to make sure we have vehicles that don't break down on the way to emergencies, of course. So I'll turn it back to you and just give me a rundown as to, you know, what I need to fight for here.
Well, for the 1 new ambulance we're referring to is coming out of the Special Event Trust Fund, and it probably will be a remount at some point. We've gotten to a good rotation with the EMT trucks, basic life support units, getting them remounted. But what we've done in the past is we've needed 3 new ALS ambulances a year. And as you know, for COVID year, for this year, there was no budgeted money. So now we have, what they're talking about is 2 remounts for next year, which would be using the last generation of the ambulance box. So it would not, we'd be putting in the frontline personnel into a unit that's not really what they're used to working. Wouldn't be a terrible thing, but it's not what we wanted to do. We wanted to get everybody under the same unit using the same type of box every day, wherever wherever they're at, they can interchange, knowing where they're reaching for a piece of equipment. We would have been able to get, move forward with those trucks, and at a certain point, probably next year, if we had 3, 3, and 3 each of these 3 years, we would getting to the point where we could remount and there would be a lesser cost. We would be remounting the present generation box that we've designed, and the personnel, the equipment committees have designed for us and to use it. So the beauty of the plan has been the 3 years, every year you get 3 new ambulances, and then to the point where we can remount 3 every year. And then we would be able to have a better backup fleet. With the backup fleet at this point is a majority of 2013s and 14s, and we just lost one. We understand this morning that needs an engine that they don't want to repair. So at some point, your backup fleet will break down daily as it has to be used more often, and there's a delay in getting to the calls because you have units out switching. You're looking at 2 hours each time you have to switch from a broken down truck back into your truck or vice versa. So it's taking units off the street.
Yes, and I really appreciate you grabbing me when we run by each other and,
Go ahead.
and filling me in on exactly what you need, because that's really what I need to hear. Let me just get this straight. The remounts are the old boxes from a truck that we are retiring, and we put the boxes onto a new vehicle. Is that correct?
That's correct. We'd like to be to the point where we have all the boxes replaced.
Right.
Presently, we have everybody other than the rec unit has the most up-to-date box. But what we'll be doing with the remounts, because we don't have enough up-to-date boxes yet to remount, we would then be using the last generation box to put on the new chassis.
Okay, that's understood. You can count on me to, fight for, make sure your vehicles are up and your backup vehicles are there. I don't think we should be playing any games with your vehicles, and make sure that you have the necessary equipment that you need to be out there. Were you going to say something, Director Hisrich?
No, sir.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, I'm done. I know if there's anything else, Chief, that you want to bring to my attention other than the vehicles?
No, that's going to be a critical point. If not today, tomorrow, in the future, it's going to be a critical point. Because also what you're looking at down the road is if you ordered it yesterday, you'd be lucky to get it in the next year.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because we ordered 18 new, public works vehicles, and I was really counting on them being on the streets before winter. But, blame it on COVID like everybody else does, I guess, because supply, demand, whatever the reason is, you're right. I agree. By this time next year, we need to start now to make sure you have the proper vehicles. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman, and I'll jump in on that as well. Councilman Wilson.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had a couple questions I want to ask that might lead to another question. One is, in my district, they're building a new rescue. I don't remember the number. What's the rescue number?
In Lafayette and Federal.
Yeah, Lafayette and Federal. What number is that?
Medic 4 is stationed out there. So some auxiliary special event vehicles that are picked up as needed.
It's going to look a lot different than previous ones they built in the past, or the old. I'm not sure what that building is previously, but anyway, I just want to make sure that as we're going through this process, like that's going to meet the needs of your bureau. Yes,
it has. We've been involved. A committee of my administrative staff have been working with the architects, the designers, et cetera, and we're very happy with what they presented to us so far and approved.
Okay, great. And then I'm not sure if this is a public safety question or maybe even just in terms of the other medic stations, I mean, are they like, what's the plan to, get at most of them and see what needs to be improved? Like, do we need to replace all of them? Like, are they just inadequate to, like, could you just walk me through like what the plan is for the future of any other of the medic stations?
There was a plan on the work, they were working a plan for Medic 12 Engine 20 building down in Hayes. I don't know where that is. I know that hit some roadblocks somewhere. In my time here since 1978, I've seen Medic 1, Medic 6, and Medic 2 have their own buildings built for them for EMS. And so the last buildings built go back to when Sophie Mazoff was mayor and cut the ribbon at Medic 6's building. So I think that was the early 90s that we last got a building built for us.
Okay.
Most of it we needed from the horse and buggy days of the fire department.
We are doing the best we can. I have a facilities manager with public safety, John Warren. And I mean, I hate to say it, but a weekend doesn't go by that he has to handle some type of response, whether it be EMS, fire, or police. And when I say, a weekend response, I'm talking about pipes breaking, no heat, no air conditioning, something that is essential. So I compliment the workers of Public Works because they do come out and they do the best they can. But there's nothing better than having a new building, an investment in a new building, and especially with the medics and firefighters that are there for 12 hours or 24-hour shifts. So there are buildings we've tried to prioritize what needs to be replaced. And it's a slow process, as Chief Romano said. Since I've been here, there has not been a new fire station or EMS station or police station. So that's been almost 6 years.
Yeah, and I thank John Warren and the director for keeping these buildings running. And they've been doing an excellent job.
Well, I'm happy to see this new facility being built in my district. The other question I had was, I just want to know, what's the number one call that you get that EMS is responding to?
You could span a great area on that between the accidents, the heart attacks, the shortness of breath. So, Deputy,
like he said, we respond to a potpourri of calls. I mean, overdoses, cardiac arrests, serious medical, people with serious medical problems, traumatic injuries, car accidents. So it's a wide variety of things that EMS responds to.
Okay. I just was looking at the numbers of overdose and just curious on if we're equipped to respond to I know this is a coordinated effort with with fire, but from your angle, are we equipped to meet the needs of this ongoing epidemic?
I believe we have been, yes. Leave behind Narcan, Narcan being available to the general public, police, bureau, fire bureau, they all carry it, can assist prior to our arrival. As you know, I have 16 ambulances to cover the whole city. We get that, I believe we need more, but we work with what you're given. But certainly, I believe we're making we make a big difference in the overdoses with how we're providing service.
Also, when I arrived here, the fire bureau did have Narcan, but the police officers didn't. And now, all public safety has Narcan, as well as a lot of, the libraries, et cetera. So, I mean, a lot of times, fortunately with the Narcan, we are saving a lot of lives, and, our police officers, I mean, we really didn't get into it, but they have saved a lot of lives on the penetrating injuries with shootings and with the tourniquets. And my hope is that possibly down the road, we will be expanding the training provided to police officers to make them first responder certified. So It's a system, everybody should be able to provide immediate care, whether you're a police officer, firefighter, of course, our EMTs and the medics, and even our animal care and control officers, have some training in immediate needs of saving a life. And we've also distributed throughout the city, to our police officers as well as our automatic external defibrillators. And, we are, if you have a witnessed arrest in the city, there's a good chance that, we'll be able to get you to the hospital alive. So we've come a long way, and hopefully trend will continue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I speaking as someone that has witnessed the coordinated effort, I have a mom who she needed a liver transplant, so there was a few issues that happened, and I saw a coordinated response with the fire and EMS, and this is going back about 4 years ago. So it was not an overdose, but anyway, it's just a separate issue that I saw, not an issue, just a separate instance that happened that anyway, it's good to see that there's that coordinated effort between the two different public safety departments. I guess, sorry, give me a moment. All right. So she's in the hospital right now again. That's why I'm a little broken up about it. So I want to focus on the overdose, the overdose plan in terms of what's left behind. Is that an actual process that we look to national leaders for? Like, what are we leaving behind? Is there some sort of response that, is there a national organization that recommends what we do in terms of some sort of wraparound service?
I'm sorry. Concerning the overdoses, there have been a lot of advances. We do have the lead behind Narcan, and we're going to soon be trialing the buprenorphine. I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing that correctly, but that's for, if we reverse an overdose, it doesn't send the patient into withdrawal and make them want to go ahead and use opioids again. It tapers it off. So hopefully at that point they can get some assistance. We are working very diligently with downtown, and I think it's a very good pilot program that's beginning.
Okay. Yeah. I just, I'm happy to hear about the commendable effort that you're doing, and you're recognized by a national organization. I guess I was just curious on, what we look to help guide, the future response for overdose. In terms of what we've seen in terms of an executive order for, there was an executive order to leave behind. I'm not quite sure what to call it, but it's some sort of test kit for individuals who are using that. I believe it's a coordinated effort with the EMS for what's it called? It's the fentanyl test strips. How's that going?
That is not being conducted by EMS. There was some legal issues on that, but that's what the executive order is basically overcome. But that'd be another good question for the Office of Health and Safety on December 6th as to that initiative.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Well, thanks. I don't have any other further questions. Thanks for everything you do.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. I do have just two quick things. On Hayes, Chief, you are absolutely right. We're still working on that. I actually know, to director's credit, we had a plan for about a $7 million budget request, because on the top of Hayes, as you're going towards Lincoln Place, we do own about 7 acres. So there is some possible discussion of that, which would be great, because the residents of Lincoln Place, always feel that they're a little far out, and that we services getting out there is always difficult. So that's always been a budget request since director brought it up to me maybe a couple years ago. And I think having those conversations, especially to get that Hayes site, whether it's brand new or we build a new one on top of the hill, it definitely needs done, because there's a lot of leaks and everything that goes on down there.
Yeah,
Last point, and I'll piggyback off of Councilman Coghill's point about the importance of saving lives. And, if it's about us getting, new vehicles for EMS, I don't see why we don't look at operating budgets and capital budgets and make amendments to get these into a process. You can't put a number on somebody's life, and what you guys do on a daily basis, and all of our public safety does this, but in order to get the best equipment out there for our residents, if it's talking about budget amendments to the $800 to $1 million range, I think it's definitely worth it. So we'll have to have those conversations, obviously internal with public safety. I know we did look at the $12 million plus that was spent this year on vehicles. I know some of it is tied to the parks tax and what those vehicles look like. I know other departments are needing vehicles as well, but there's got to be a way that we can chip in and get some more money by the time this budget's passed in the next few weeks, and just put our thinking caps on and move some capital money if we have to make this work. So, I think everybody on council would be supportive of that once we get to that conversation. So those were really only my only comments. And, I'm glad that we have these budget hearings so we can see what everybody's priorities are moving forward. So, Chief, no questions. Thank you very much. I see no other council members with questions there. If there's nothing else further from EMS, thank you again for being here. And we will now go to animal control. If I believe Strelick, there he is. Okay. If you don't mind, we'll go to animal control and then fire after that.
Yeah, real quick before we move off EMS, I didn't include it in your cheat sheets because it's not in this year's budget, but in the out years of the capital budget, there's about $8 million for relocating the Hayes station. So things can change. We're 15 months away from the 2023 budget, but as of today, there may be money for that. And thank you, EMS. And moving on to animal care and control. The mission of the Bureau of Animal Care and Control is to serve the residents of the city of Pittsburgh by providing care, control, education, and resolutions to situations dealing with domestic animals and wildlife. As of the last payroll report, we had 14 of the 16 budgeted positions filled. For the 2022 budget, their budget will be exactly $1,787,301. That's an increase of 9%. That's the staffing positions remain steady at 16. Just the 3% union cost of living increases in there. The increase is in the non-salary accounts. There's $60,000 additional budgeted next year for mobile document software, plus an additional $20,000 for body cameras for the animal control officers. Their animal care and control does have a revenue, about $200,000 for animal care and control revenue. That's a slight increase of 2% from what was budgeted this year. There are, again, some capital line items in the vehicle equipment acquisition. Preliminary plan calls for 2 live animal control trucks that would cost about $80,000 each. And that's all I have for the 2022 highlights. Turn it back over to Director Hisrich, and I believe that's Supervisor Madden who walked into the room.
Thanks, Mike. Dave, do you have anything to say? I think that things are going well at Animal Care and Control, and let Dave add any comments.
Yeah, we're doing really well down there. I did hire 3 new officers this year, and 2 of the 3 have already completed their initial training and are into the work schedule. We saved a lot of animals this year, a lot of ducklings from sores, 2 pit bulls that have been running up and down the east side of town for the last year. We found out where they were living in an abandoned house and were able to set traps for them and catch them. Turned out to be very nice dogs. And we found out the female dog recently had a litter. We were able to save those puppies and get everybody adopted into a new home. We took 9 animals to PBSCC, mainly hit by car animals. Several of them were owned and the owners were able to go there and reclaim them and then pay those bills. But those lives were saved by the officers responding as quickly as they could and getting them out to PBSCC.
Councilman O'Connor, back to you.
Thank you. Thanks for the quick update. I don't know if anybody in council, I can't see chambers, so I don't know if any members have questions. I would just like to say, you know, I think we don't talk enough about animal control and some of the calls that you get. As you mentioned, you know, there's pit bulls running around, you know, feral cats, things like that, that you have to be able to adjust. And I know that the director's done a good job over the years supporting you guys, as well as, you know, putting funding in there, making sure that we have good partnerships with Animal Rescue League and other partners that can help us with a lot of issues that pop up with animals throughout our city. So, you know, I know that I would say the one thing that I probably get the most calls about, and I think it's a lot to do with COVID. You know, we have deer populations that now think that they own the roads because there weren't as many cars on there for a long time. So I know that, you know, issues like that are popping up in my area because I have 2 regional parks. But, you know, overall, I think animal control with your resources, you get a lot done. So I have no questions. Any members in chambers?
Councilman O'Connor.
Sorry, go ahead, Councilman.
Thank you. No, just a couple quick questions. You know, forgive me for not remembering this, Dave, but Mount Oliver, are we now taking care of Mount Oliver, or do we vote against that? I can't remember.
No, we are not taking care of Mount Oliver. I don't think we could come to an agreement on the charges, the fees we would charge them at the time. And when it was brought before council, I believe council 2 years ago said no, because the union wasn't for it.
Okay, that's.
That being said, if there's an emergency, since we do provide EMS to Mount Oliver, I've always said that if there's an emergency, we will respond. I mean, we occasionally do get calls where the dog is over the master, or and the person's a victim, and we will respond on an exigent circumstance to make sure to save lives.
Sure. And my other question was body cameras. I mean, you know, I certainly understand that with the police. But what is the purpose for animal control to have body cameras?
Yeah, we're looking into the situation. Believe it or not, there's been several instances, both with the animal control officers and with the park rangers, with discrepancies on what was said and confrontations that occur. So that is number one, to protect the city's liability and to protect the officers, the animal control officers of the park rangers. I'm not sure. We're going to have to look into it legally to see and to work with the union on it, but it's actually not to big brother over the officers, but rather to protect them on a he said, she said type instance.
Sure. You know, as Councilman O'Connor pointed out, deer are just running wild. When I was growing up in the city, there were no deer. You had to travel 80 miles north to see the closest deer. Today, they're walking up my street. I say hi to them in the morning. I'm feeding them. It's really crazy how many deer there are. So my question is, when a deer is killed, if it's on, say, Banksville Road, which is a state road, is that our responsibility, or is that fall to the state?
either state roads or highways, they actually have their own dead animal pickups. We just cover everything within the city of Pittsburgh. And right now, we're probably averaging a minimum of 2 dead deer per day.
2 deer per day?
2 dead deer per day, and a lot of times we actually will get between 2 and 10 calls per day for dead deer.
Right. Okay, the other thing was, these crocodiles running loose in my neighborhood. I know we had 1 or 2 of them, but then I know some other districts had some, but, I'm sure those were isolated. I don't believe we've had any more, crocodile calls as of late, but for a while there, I think there was 2 or 3 in a 2-month period.
We had 5 in 2019. That also included the 6-foot one that was walking on its own. But since that time, though, we haven't had any. And just a really quick correction there, they were alligators, not crocodiles. If that had
They're
been
alligators. Okay. Yeah, sorry. Don't mean to spend, to offend the crocodile species there, but
no.
yeah. So either one are not welcome in my neighborhood, though. So
I agree.
okay, no, that's it for me. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson?
I think
No, he's not in the room. Sorry.
he's good. Yeah.
Seeing no further questions, Chief, thank you very much, and we'll pass it off to Fire.
All right. Thank you.
All right, the last Public Safety Bureau of the day, because again, Office of Community Health and Safety and Stop the Violence has its own meeting on the 6th, is the Bureau of Fire. It is a mission of the Bureau of Fire to protect life, property, and the environment by providing effective customer and human services related to fire suppression, emergency medical services, hazard mitigation, emergency management services, and domestic preparedness. As of the third quarter report, the Bureau of Fire had 679 employees, of which 673 of those are frontline union firefighters. The total proposed budget for 2022 for the Bureau of Fire is $92,128,176. That's an increase of about 2.6%. Staffing remains the same, 670 employees. 667 of those are uniformed firefighters, plus $750,000 for fire recruits. There's a couple changes in non-salaries. Operational supplies are increased by $161,000. That's an increase on 2021's budget. It's the same as it was in 2020, so it's a restoration. Machinery and equipment increased by $150,000. That's equipment for pumpers and aerials. Instead of including it in the capital budget because it's going on the fire truck, we're putting that in the operating budget because they're reusable equipment. Workforce training decreased by $50,000. It's not really a decrease. It was moved to Public Safety Administration. That's fireboat training. And computer maintenance also increased about $35,000. That's a contracted increase to ESO Solutions for software. Fire has a number of revenues that they contribute to the operating budget. The largest is a coverage of Wilkinsburg and Ingram. That's $1.9 million coming in this year, plus some smaller revenues, safety inspections at about $62,000, fire records, $3,000, fire alarms, $135,000 for commercial, plus another $127,000 residential. I believe that was in the Department of Finance this year, so this may be new for Bureau of Fire, plus burglar alarms, $15,000, and hazmat permits and storage licenses for another $2,000. There's a couple of capital projects not directly under the Bureau, but certainly affecting the Bureau. Planning renovations at Fire Station number 8 this year for $3.3 million, and some smaller renovations at Fire Station 19 for $200,000. Also capital equipment, 2 pumpers for $500,000 each, plus continuing payments on the fire truck lease, and a small amount for insurance on the fireboat. That's all I have for 2022 changes. Again, passing it back to Director Hisrich and fire personnel.
All right, thank you, sir. And to my left is Assistant Chief Norm Marvel, and to his left is Assistant Chief Brian Kikila. So who's speaking, Brian?
Sure.
Chief Kikila, if you would like to provide a brief opening statement.
Absolutely. And thank you, Council. Thank you, Director. The Bureau of Fire continues to serve our mission and care for the citizens and visitors of the city. And we've overcome a great deal of challenges, and that especially directly related to the impacts of COVID-19. We achieved success in this realm through a collaborative approach, working directly with labor we formed a COVID-19 task force to address the challenges that we were facing, and we continue to work well with labor to resolve some of those issues. As we have presented our budget requests, several have been met, and we remain with some opportunities to enhance our service delivery. But notably, our focus remains on our human capital, and they are still our most valuable asset coming out for service to the residents. Chief.
I echo that, and Brian and I glad to be here, and we support and work with the men and women of the Bureau of Fire every day to, as he said, carry out our mission. And we're here to answer any questions that we may be able to answer for you today. Thank you, Director.
Councilman O'Connor.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I believe, is it Councilman Coghill still with us?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Councilman, I'll pass it off to you. And just so I know, you're the only one left in chambers, correct?
I am, yes.
Okay, all right, sounds good. Take it away.
Okay, first I want to compliment Mr. Strelick. Hey, Mike, good job. I feel like you look like an airport pilot, and I feel like we're getting ready for takeoff. And I like the way you're running things. So nice job on that before we go. Secondly, again, our public safety, whether we're talking paramedics, firefighters, or police, are heads and shoulders above everybody as far as I'm concerned. As far as pay scale goes, I think they should be the highest paid. As far as equipment goes, whether it's ambulances or fire trucks, we need to find the money. And I'm so glad to hear Councilman O'Connor, who has much more experience at this than me, and hopefully proposing where we can get those ambulances that we need, at least to make sure everybody's up to speed. And another thing I'll say about firefighters, I have so many living in my district, and not only are they firefighters, they are paramedics also, when they're first responders, and generally all around really good people who, have no desire to leave the city, as far as I know in my talks with them. They're so wonderful to have in the neighborhood because they're there to help out in any situation when they're off duty even. So, and I also want to say, I don't think people realize, how dangerous their job is. Of course, we have a history of police officers that we've lost in the line of duty, but I'm willing to bet if we went back the past 50 years, that number is probably equal as far as our firefighters go, if not more. So I don't know how many citizens have been in a burning building. I have been a couple of times. It's the scariest thing in the world, and your life is certainly on the line. So like our police officers, they put their lives on the line every time they're out there. When they get a call, it's nothing more valuable than having them there. So I will always support whatever our paramedics, firefighters, and police need in the way of equipment. And I think it goes down to the way of and payroll as well. I want to make sure they're the best paid. I don't want them leaving for other departments or other cities. So I'm here really just to listen to you, and I have a really close, good communication with the union, and Mr. Leach is here today, and he's always quick to tell me what they need or what they don't need. And typically I know firefighters are very good at communicating with the administration as to what they need, and I hope they get everything they need. And if you don't, then of course they will bring those up to us, and I will be the first one to support whatever it is that the fire department is in need of. So I just want to thank them for their work. Between again, the paramedics, the police, and our firefighters, second to none, best in the country, I feel, and deserve top pay, and of course the equipment that they need. That's it. It was really more of a comment, unless somebody wants to respond.
Yeah, no, I mean, Councilman, with no questions, I think you hit the nail on the head. You know, we didn't say this at the beginning, and that's, you know, usually that's how I open this public hearing, but you know, everybody at this meeting today, you know, they have their lives as well as their partners' lives, you know, their department's lives, and most importantly, the city of Pittsburgh, our residents' lives on their mind at all times. And we don't give them enough credit. And, you know, whatever money we can spend, as we mentioned, for equipment and things like that. I mean, it sounds like fire doesn't have too many concerns at this point. I know that there was some discussion maybe a couple months ago about new equipment and vendors and things like that, but I believe that was all worked out, which is good. So I don't have any questions. I do want to, you know, obviously thank the director. Director Hisrich has done an amazing job in this city over the past, I can't count how many years. Sure, it seemed longer for you. And, you know, what you and your staff have done, it's a credit to you. And, you know, we need that knowledge longer in the city. And we hope that you'll stick around and support us as well. I know just your staff that was there today. The only one I can really see is Lee, and I want to thank him for his support as well. But I think, you know, with regard to fire, if there's nothing further that you would request from council, I'll leave it alone at this point. But I think Councilman Coghill mentioned it. I think it's a great thing that, you know, what everybody does and the brave men and women that we have serving our city. It's really important that we give them their due diligence and due credit as well. And for everybody at Public Safety for coordinating this public meeting today. For Mike Strelick, who I will say, Mike, if Anthony's letting you fly the plane, I'm walking wherever we're going. But I just want to end and thank everybody for their support throughout this process. Chief Directors, I don't know if you want to add anything.
No, as I started, I appreciate your support, Councilman O'Connor, and all the council members. I mean, it's been very rewarding over the last, almost 6 years now to have the support of council. And, you know, we may have some heated discussions, but I think that everyone is doing what they feel is right for the public. And as I've told you, Councilman O'Connor, you know, as far as, you know, we're going to become more transparent, especially on the police side. I mean, the technical aspects may be a little bit slow, but that is our goal, is to be able to provide the public a very transparent vision of not only police, but all public safety. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Just a technical thing for Mike. Am I adjourning the hearing?
You are recessing it because it's like one long hearing with all the departments.
So
Okay.
I'll make a motion to recess, correct?
Motion to recess. I'll second. Thank you, everybody, for being here.